going? Alright, so episode 5. I'm probably gonna say this every single time I do a video because every single episode seems to be doing so much better than the one previous, and it's just blowing my mind. Alright, so a couple of quick things before I continue with my review. I think I reached 400 over 400 subscribers since like last week. So let me just start off by saying thank you so much for that. That's like crazy. And also, yes, I have heard the news about Cassandra Clare, and I'm not really gonna get into that, besides saying that, you know, that kind of sucks, and I pretty much hope that it doesn't affect the show or any future books too dramatically. I don't really think we have enough facts yet to really come to any conclusions, so I'm just hoping that it doesn't affect the show, and we just can continue on with season 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And also, I have my fan on, and if you can hear that in the background, I apologize, but it is like really hot in California right now, and it's just, I don't like the heat, and so I need a fan so I don't look like I'm sweating all over the place. Alright, so let's just get right into the review. So we start off, it seems like it started directly from episode 4, the last episode, because in the end of the last episode, Clary saw Valentine through her little necklace, and she like freaked out. And so the beginning of this episode, we are with Clary and Jace, and Clary is showing Jace the necklace, and we finally learn what the heck this thing is. So the necklace, turns out the purple part is apparently a shard or a piece of a portal. Jace told us that, so now we finally know what that is, and it makes sense why Clary is seeing all this stuff, because it's a portal. So yeah, and then we learn that, and then Alec comes in and he's like, what's going on here? And so they have their little discussion. He's trying to like get whatever out of Clary, and he's like, oh, emotions are nothing but a distraction. You know, you're ruled by them and we're taught to whatever. And she's like, oh yeah? How's that working out for you? Oh my goodness. I loved all of the Clary and Alec banter throughout this entire episode, and then that one scene later on. Ooh. So yeah, I am going to talk about that in a minute, because that was probably like my favorite scene out of the entire episode. And then after this part, Alec takes them to the training area where they have that like security box that comes out of the ground, and so he put the necklace in there, and then as they were walking to the actual training room, Matt is so tall. I know we know this, and I know it's just a fact of life, but he's so tall, and I find it so funny because it's just like, you're very tall. I don't even know. Alright, and so then right after that, we get the part with Izzy and Clary. Again, I am loving their relationship so much. I am just all here. I am so for this Izzy and Clary relationship, because it's just so much love, and I love it, and it's amazing, and I love that they're friends, and I love it. And then kind of like what I was saying in the my last video, how Izzy is just, she knows when to be there for people, and she knows when to be just so helpful, and that obviously showed during the scene with her and Clary, and it was just so nice because she was like, oh, tell me about your mom, you know, she sounds awesome, and da-da-da-da, and I was like, oh, that's so nice. And then they get up and they walk to the elevator, and then they're still talking. Izzy's like, oh, Alec was interested in Valentine's style, interesting. I'm like, oh, Izzy, you sly dog. And then right after Clary presses the button on the elevator, and they're about to go, I don't know where they were gonna go, and Maris, that's how Jace says it later on, but Maris comes, Izzy and Alec and Jace's mom comes. Let me just say that I am so loving this actress playing Maris, because she's so intimidating. She played her so well. Just the way like she opens the doors and continues walking, she just walks with like so straight, and then when she sees Izzy, she's like, oh, dressed to impress, I see. I'm like, rude. That was completely unnecessary, mom. Like that, it's just, the relationship between Maris and her kids is so complicated. Okay, and then after she says that about Izzy, and Clary's just like, geez, Izzy mentions Max, and she's like, oh, where's Max? And he's like, oh, something about somebody's picking him up, I don't know what, and I was just like, so, oh my god, they mentioned Max. I am so excited for this little 10-year-old kid. I am just so over the moon about this little guy, and I just love him, and he's so great, and I'm so glad that they are bringing him earlier on, because in the books, I don't think they mention him until either the second or third book, one of the two, because I don't think he's in the first one at all, and they don't mention him until he actually comes. And so I'm glad that they're bringing him up now, and then he's gonna be in the 8th episode, I think, I'm just freaking out because I just finished looking at the pictures with Max and Alec, and the height differences, and Max is like the length of Alec's leg, and it's just, it's so cute, and he's so adorable. And then I think of Max, and then I get all sad, and then it's just, ugh. Oh, and then another thing that I was so sad about, when they keep walking, and then Maris is watching Jace train, and then Clary is talking to Izzy, and she's like, oh, is this your mom always like that? Like, she didn't even hug you. And then she's like, Izzy's like, oh yeah, Shadowhunters are really big huggers. And then she hugs Jace. I'm like, rude. And then Izzy's face, like, she just looks down like she's so just sad. And it's just very sad because poor Izzy is just trying to just be the person that everybody wants her to be. And then, like, her mom is giving her a hard time, and her brother gives her, I mean, Alec doesn't really give her a hard time, but she's trying to not disappoint everyone, and she's trying so hard to just be just, ugh. And then Jace, like, sees her and gives her a hug, and Alec eventually comes, like, a couple of seconds later, and he even gets, like, a kiss from his mom, and Izzy is over there still getting nothing, and I'm like, ugh. And so Jace is, like, obviously the favorite in Maris's eyes. I don't know about Robert yet because he hasn't come in the picture. And I saw something somewhere that, oh, the Lightwood parents, they do love their kids, but that they love their jobs and their standing and the clave more. And I thought that was a good way of thinking about that, because obviously they love their kids, like, obviously, but they don't know how to show it to their children, and that's why they're so, like, independent, and they're so wanting attention from their parents. And it's, like, really sad, because so I just thought that was really sad that Maris and they were all like that. And so I'm really excited for Max to come along, and so we can just see more love between all of the Lightwoods. It's just gonna be so cute. Oh my god. Okay, so once again, my camera has failed, so I'm using my other one. So sorry if this looks weird. But to continue on, alrighty, so then the scene after that is when we have that Jason Alex scene that we got in the sneak peek last week. Alright, so this scene was utterly heartbreaking. So Jason and Alec are talking, right? And okay, so the first thing I noticed watching this scene, they are talking, and Jace obviously sees something that's wrong with Alec, and so he grabs him on the shoulder. He's like, dude, what's wrong with you? And Alec flinches, and I'm like, oh, my poor baby. Like, Jace grabbed him, and he, like, looked at it and, like, almost was like, don't touch me. And that was just so sad, because then he, like, looks off into nothing as if, like, it was just, you know. Okay, and then Jace is like, dude, what is wrong with you? And so Alec's like, you know, you have every right to be mad at me. And Jace is like, what do you mean? Like, what'd you do? Did you put my leather jacket in the washer again? I love how that was an actual thing that happened in their lives once. I want more of a story for that. Anyways, and so Alec is like, no, you know, with the demon and your face popping up or whatever. And Jace is like, well, you love me, like, I love you too. And after he said that, Alec's face, like, in Alec's own way, like, lit up, like, he almost smiled. And you could just see, as soon as Jace was like, come on, man, we're parabatai, like, of course we love each other. And you could just see it, like, Matt's acting was great, and you could just see everything, all the hope, everything just drain from his face, and it was just so sad. I'm like, oh, Alec, it's okay. So yeah, that was one of the scenes during this episode by itself that made me kind of sad between Jace and Alec. And I still don't like the word parabatai. Like, when I was reading the books, I said Parabati, and I don't know why, to me that just sounds more Shadowhuntery, like, hey, you're my Parabati. Like, no, you're my Parabatai. Like, I don't like Parabatai. It's just too many syllables. Well, I mean, I guess they have the same amount of syllables, but it's just too many, like, I don't even know. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. Oh, and then right after they did that, their really beautiful little hug, and it was so funny because, like I said, Matt is so tall, and so when he's hugging him, and they pan out, you could see Jace was like, you could see Don was on his tippy toes, and I just thought that was hilarious and adorable. And then Alec, when he's hugging him, and then he like hugs him and he like closes his eyes for a minute, I was like, oh. Okay, and then right after this is when we get that scene with Raphael and Simon, and this was a scene that I was totally not expecting in this episode. But all I have to say about that scene is that Raphael looked pretty good. I like when he's like outside or in a darker environment because he doesn't look as white, as pasty as he did like in the third episode that he was in. So he looked very stylish. I was very happy with that. Okay, so then on to the Alec and Clary scene, because Alec was told to take care of the Fairchild girl. And so all of their scenes together in this episode were my favorite. They were my favorite parts of this episode. I am loving Alec and Clary, how they are having them like interact with each other in the show. I am just loving it. So the very first one is when they're fighting in the training room, and then Alec is basically trying to teach her how to fight, and so he's like giving her pointers, and I was happy to see that he was actually giving her pointers, because I mean, if he really hated her as much as he's making it seem, like he just like wouldn't teach her anything or even teach her the wrong things, but he's not doing that. Like he obviously cares enough for Jace to care a little bit about Clary, and so I was liking that scene. And then it was so funny when Clary's like, oh yeah, just like hit me or whatever, and he's like, what did he say? He's like, oh, don't make me say you're right about something, and his little smirk. I was like, oh my god. And I also really like the relationship that they're having in the show, because in the book, you know that scene where he is pretty violent with her and he like pushes her up against a wall, and they did the exact same thing in the movie. Like Alec pushes her up against a wall and threatens her, and I think I've said before that I like that scene, but I don't think I like that, you know, the violence. I liked the shock factor of like, oh my god, like he is really mad, and I think that's what I liked. But I loved how they did this in the show. I loved how, well, I'll get to that in a second. And also like how when they were back in the training room and Clary is like very obviously sympathetic with Alec, and how she's like, oh yeah, your mom, I like how she is, and he's like, yeah, well, you know, that's how mothers are, and Clary is like, oh well, mine's not. And so I'm glad that she is not like only thinking about herself, because and then they said a thing right out of the book, and Alex says, oh, what is it, the law is hard, but it's the law. That was straight out of the book. I appreciated that. All right, so this is the scene that we get Magnus's call, and I watched that scene I don't know how many times last week during the sneak peek, but it's just so great. So first of all, Alexander, Magnus calls him Alexander, and I flipped out. Well, because Alec answered the phone not knowing who it was, so I'm putting money on the fact that Izzy was probably one that gave it to Magnus. I'm pretty sure that when they were back at Magnus's apartment that she slipped Magnus his number. I'm pretty sure that that's what happened. Oh, and then Magnus is like, oh yeah, don't you remember me, like with the demon? I just thought that was so funny. I thought that was so funny how he mentioned that just so casually, like, yeah, remember the demon that we killed last week? And also Magnus wasn't flirting like as hard as he was the first time that he met Alec, and he was basically just like, oh, like you're very sympathetic, and like you want to go out for a drink sometimes, and Alec's like, that sounds fun. When? And you know, Magnus says like, how about right now? And then Alec realizes that Clary has sneaked away, and so he's like, can't do it right now, talk to you later, bye, or whatever he says. And Magnus, when they went back to Magnus, and he's like, oh, playing hard to get, I love a challenge. And that smirk that he does before the camera like pans out somewhere else, I love that smirk. I love that face that he makes. I just love it. I love it so much. And then there's a quick scene with the werewolves and that Theo guy. I forgot that Luke wasn't the alpha from the get-go. I don't know why I forgot that. But I kind of like that actor. He looked like a pretty good actor, and it was so funny when the werewolf walked in through that doggy door. Like, the werewolves have a doggy door. That was just so funny to me. And I am honestly pretty impressed with how the werewolves look in the show, because it's TV, and so I wasn't expecting a lot. And you know, they're not perfect. They're not like out of like Van Helsing. I don't know why I really like the werewolves from Van Helsing, but it's TV budget, so of course they're not going to look like super great, but I thought they looked good. They're like big furry dogs, and they just look pretty good. But yeah, like with the alpha, he was a total like douche canoe, man. But then he died later, so it was okay. Okay, and then after that we get to probably my favorite scene out of the entire episode, is when Clary is in front of the Brooklyn Academy of Art, and she is... We didn't know this until Alec came up behind her after her cell phone started ringing, and everybody looked at their phone as if it was theirs, and then it wasn't. And Alec's like, what's the use of an invisibility rune if you don't silence your cell phone? I'm like, the sass. But yeah, then right after that, Clary gets off the phone with Simon, and so they're walking off, and Clary is like, why are you always so miserable all the time? And he's like, I'm not. And she's like, yeah, you are, basically. And she's like, you're in love with Jace. Just say it. It'll make you feel better. And he's just so taken back. Like, what did you just say to me? Like, his reaction was perfect. And she's like, yeah, you're in love with Jace. Just say it. You'll feel better. And he's like, no, you're in love with Jace. And she's like, really? The middle school comeback? Nice. I thought that was perfect dialogue. That was amazing. I loved it so much. And I liked it a lot better than the books. I'm noticing that I'm liking a lot of things better than the book, because in the book, when Alex slammed her against the wall, like I said, I was very shocked that he did that, because up until that point he had just been talking a lot of smack and seemed very like soft until that moment. And so when they did it in the show, I thought it was a lot more in tune to Alex's character. And another thing that I'm really enjoying and that I really hope that they do is kind of make Alec and Clary good friends. Like, can you imagine? That would be so wonderful. Clary to be like really good friends with Alec and Isabel, because Isabel and Clary are already like total bros. But imagine Clary and Alec. I would just love that so much. Like, Alec is already feeling very alone. So just to know that this girl that he supposedly hated totally understands where he's coming from and is like willing to embrace him. And for him to like maybe even get over, I mean eventually like after he gets with Magnus, but for him to not hate her and like want to be friends with her more because she's so understanding, that would be so wonderful. Oh my goodness. Alright, and then there was that scene with Meliorn. I don't really have too much to say about that scene. Meliorn was in mourning. Not too much to say about it. Moving on. Then right before we get to that scene where they're in the loft, we get that scene with Valentine in Chernobyl again. I don't understand why he's in Russia, but it was funny because he was talking and then he started speaking a different language. I'm like, what language is he speaking? And then I realized it was Russian. I'm like, why wouldn't I realize that from the get-go? But so Valentine is still looking scary as heck, as per usual. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say about that scene with Valentine. I'm excited to see Valentine somewhere that's not Chernobyl. Like, I'm excited for him, for the end of the season, for him to finally come to New York and just throw down, because I'm tired of seeing him in that dirty old factory, and it's just, yeah. Alright, so then we finally get to that scene with Alec and Clary and Simon, because Simon joined them to go to the loft. And Alec had so many just amazingly sassy comments during the scene. It was hilarious. Like when he says, oh, the world's been ending for 1,000 years. You get used to it. On point. And then when, what's it called, Simon was like doing his parkour all over the place, and Clary and Simon like complimented each other on climbing the stairs. And so he's like, oh, climbing a fire escape excites mundanes. Like, that was just so funny. Oh my god. Then they finally get to the loft, and then Simon, because of his, you know, vampireness, he can see that he has the sight, and he can see all the runes that everybody else is seeing also. And so that was a good touch. And then he uses his like super strength to open that door. And so I love how Alec is just like, huh, he has a sight, he's super strong, nothing is going on here. Like, why wouldn't he say something? Oh, and it was also really funny when they saw that sign on the wall, and Clary was like, oh yeah, that's when me and Simon were engaged to be married. And then Alec is like, you know, I'm pretty sure that I want to hear none of the story. And as soon as he says that, Simon just starts telling the story, and Alec's just like, oh my god. Alright, so then they finally get into the loft. And so I think I saw somewhere, I think it was on Kat's Twitter, where she said that was the actual set that they burned. So that was pretty cool. It looked pretty authentic, because it was. And so the box. Okay. Okay, so I'm sorry that these camera angles keep like switching back and forth. I keep using my different cameras because they keep like stopping and then starting, and anyways. Okay, so talking about the box, I had seen something on Instagram, Tumblr a while back, with the theory that that JC box is actually gems, because the JC Jonathan Clark, apparently, like they were saying in the show, maybe that was passed down, because that box looks like old, and so maybe it was passed down from generation to generation, and it actually belonged to Jem. It was Jem's, like, remember his like powder drug box, and so maybe it was Jem's, and I don't even know what to think about that. Right, so then what's her name, Clary, she sees the box and she opens it. She has no idea what any of this stuff is, and so she says that she's like, I don't have any idea what any of this stuff is. And so inside we see the little shoe and the lock of blonde hair and that rattle. And so all right, and so then Alec hears a rumbling and he goes outside, and it was really cool because his arrows like became visible as soon as he like let the glamour go away. And what's it called? So I thought that was cool. And then as he was walking away, he sees the werewolf, and then he sees Alaric. I kept pronouncing it Alaric, but Alaric, apparently. Alaric and Theo are taking Simon and Clary away, and so you could just see how scared Alec was, and mostly because of how he knows Jace is going to react. Like, that's the majority of the reason why he was scared. And then we go back to that scene with Meliorn, and then Jace gets a text, and he's like, Alec, let her get away, and then Izzy's like, oh, you're blaming our brother? Fascinating. Like, stop fighting. Stop fighting. And Jace was so mad at Alec. I felt so bad for him. Like, it's not his fault that Clary ran off in the first place, and it's not his fault that he was not distracted, but that the werewolf obviously distracted him so that they could take Clary and Simon. Like, it's not his fault. Then they had to do that parabatai tracking thing again, and then they couldn't do it, and so Jace got mad at Alec again. I'm like, stop. Oh, and then, oh my goodness, Jace made me mad when he was yelling at Alec, and he's like, oh, maybe your mother was right and your best isn't good enough. Excuse me, Jace? Excuse me? Like, now she's his mother? What happened to mom? You know, you were saying mom earlier as in your mother. That was rude. I was not here for that. Jace needs to get his act together and be nice to his brother, his parabatai of all people. He needs to be nice. And then Izzy was having none of it. She was like, Jace, like, what the heck, bro? Jace and Alec need, or Jace, because he's the only one, well, not really, they need to get off that anger train and love each other, because just, I need it. Alright, so after that, we finally get to the Jade Wolf. It looks pretty cool. I didn't talk about this earlier. I like how it looks. It looks very like it was explained in the books. It looks rugged and kind of broken down a little. Not broken down, but like not so professionally kept, because I mean, it's a glamour and it's technically like the wolf pack slayer, so I mean, okay. So then when they took Simon and Clary and they were like interrogating her, I felt kind of bad for Alaric because he obviously did not want to be doing that, but he's not the alpha, so he had to obey Theo, which he's a douche canoe, like I said. And I also thought that Kat reacting to that werewolf was not the best, but I mean, this is the first time she's seeing a werewolf, and she's kind of just looking at her like, oh, you guys are werewolves? Like, I would have liked to see her like jump or something just to be a little bit more scared of this downworlder creature that she has never seen before. So that was maybe my only complaint with this episode, was that I didn't really care for how she reacted to that, or she didn't react enough to the werewolf, in my opinion. Oh, but then right before that, she had a really funny line, and so then when they were taking her, and she's like, oh, not to be self-centered, but I think it's me that they're after. I thought that was so funny, like how she said it, and like in the context, it was a funny line. Oh my god. And then Simon's back with his funny lines, because he's like, oh, I bet this guy has the scariest online profiles. Like that. I love his one-liners, like they're so great. And so then right after that, when they take Simon away, Clary's like freaking out, and so we switch to Simon hanging upside down. He's like, this again? And so it was so funny, the way like his face, like, and how the camera, it was just, I loved it. Oh, and then he was like all surprised by his own strength, like when he broke the handcuffs and everything. That was pretty awesome. And then once he did that and he found the phone, it was so funny because the first time that I watched it and he got the phone, I'm like, I heard, who are you gonna call? Or who are you gonna call? And so in my head, I'm like, Ghostbusters! But that's not what he said. He said, who do you call? So for like the rest of the night, Ghostbusters was just in my head. Okay, and then when he finally calls, Jace, and they're like, where are you? And so he finds like the menu, and he's like, and they have really inexpensive cocktails. And I thought that the way that he said that was so hilarious. I loved it. It's so great. And then right after that, where he had the lighter and he was talking to Jace, and he's like, have you never seen an action movie? Oh my goodness, I love it so much when in movies and TV shows they talk about movies and TV shows, because it's like you're in a TV show and you're talking about a movie or something. So it's like Inception, and I'm like really entertained by that. Okay, and then they throw Clary into that container, and I just had like Dexter flashbacks when I watched that. I was just like, ugh. But anyways, so she has her witch light. I thought that was pretty cool, because Jace gives it to her like in episode 2, and so she still had that, and then she does the fire rune and she like blows herself up, and she's just like dazed and confused. So Luke finally opens the door to the locker, and I was just like, yes, Luke! And then she's like waving it at him, and he's like, you know you can't cast spells with that thing. I'm like, that was funny. Okay, and then he just like slings her over his shoulder and they start walking out, and then Jace and Alec come and like attack Luke, and Jace like knocks him out. And so I thought it was really great how like she fell over Luke's shoulder, and then Alec got her in his arms and like put her down. I'm like, oh, you could have just let her fall. That's nice. And then Izzy saves Simon, and we get that scene with, I'm getting really tired of saving your life, and he's like, I am not. Sissy. Oh, and I really, really, really liked the entire werewolf scene. I enjoyed the heck out of that. It was almost like, it wasn't just about Clary and like her problems. It like that scene went a little bit broader to like the whole werewolf political, like the werewolf thing with like the alpha coming out, and then Luke saving them, which was awesome. And I really liked how they filmed that scene. They didn't show us the fight, and I think that if they did, it would have been cheesy if they showed us a bunch of like these not perfectly well done CGI things fighting. So I really like how they had them like the wincing noises and everything behind those crates, and then so Theo like turns back into a human. Ooh, I really like how they're doing that with like their transitions. I'm happy that they don't come out naked because then that would just cause a lot of problems probably. And so Theo is dead, and Luke is the new alpha, and then all of the other werewolves become humans again, and then they like bow and kneel to him, and what's his name, Jace is like, oh, your friend is the new alpha. I'm like, yes, Luke is the new alpha. So now finally Luke and Clary are back together again. Clary doesn't think that he's a crazy monster. Luke is like finally with Clary and knows that she's gonna be fine, well hopefully, because he's hurt right now. And so I really like the scene like when they got in the car, and then Clary's like, please don't leave me again. I'm like, oh my god. And then right before that, when Clary and Jace are talking, like Clary's gonna go to him, and Jace is like, whoa, hold up now. And so he like caresses her face. I'm just like, oh, look at that Clace. Okay, and then when he's like, oh yeah, we need a warlock to save him. And so Clary's like, oh, Magnus, we need to go to Magnus. And Jace is like, okay, I'll take you. And so Alec is like, we need to get back to Mom. We need to like tell them what's happening. He's like, you know what? You can do that. You and Izzy can go. I'm going to go with Clary to save Luke or whatever. And so there's like a rift between them, and I'm not liking it. And then like when he goes into the car, and I know it's not going to last, but so I'm not like freaking out over it. But I mean, it's just like, oh, and the heartstrings. And Jace like looks back at Magnus, Alec and Izzy, and there's like a very obvious like, as if he's choosing somebody that's not his family. And so it was just kind of sad. And then Izzy's like, is everything okay between you two? And he's like, I don't know. And just, oh. So then that was the end of that. And then they drive away. And I love this scene, this episode so much. It was so great. And it's just, I think we're getting near the middle of the season now. Can you believe it's been 5 episodes already? This has been on for over a month. That's insane after we've been waiting for so long. And it's just insane. Awesome sauce craziness. Yeah, that was the end of that episode. I thought it was amazing. Next episode is going to be even better. We get Magnus in the next episode. We're going to get a little bit of Malik in the next episode. It's going to be insane. And I'm just so excited for that. Oh my goodness. And also they started releasing a few pictures. Oh, we got our first look at Lydia Brandwell. I am like so excited for her character. She's new and she wasn't in the books, but I'm like really excited about her character for some reason, and I'm just very excited, excitement all over the place. And she looks really cool. She looks a little bit like Maurice in like the sense of her like intimidation, but I am just excited for that so much. So yeah, that is all that I have to say about this episode. Thank you all so much for watching. I got like 1,000 views on my last Shadowhunters review. What? So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Like, this is insane. Please leave all of your comments down below. Like, seriously, if you have like even just to say whatever, like leave it down below. I love talking to you guys. I respond to everybody, and just, yeah, you know the use. So thank you all so much for watching again, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!